Welcome to the channel, I'm Smiley Face X, and today I thought I'd do something a little bit different. I'm going to teach you how to do all your setups, what squad to pick, what dudes to put in, and what gear they should have. So let's get straight into it. Alright, so first and foremost, what squad to use, okay? The way that I answer this is I pretty much break it down into 3 separate little sub-questions that are all aiming to do the same thing. The first one, what ranges are we working with? So for instance, on this map here, I'd count this as long range, okay? So the teams that are best suited for long range are the Rangers. The SWAT can do it a little bit with the Dragunov and the machine gun for these fellas as well. Okay, so not too bad, but really if there's more than like 1 or 2 chokes, you do want to use the Rangers for the longer range maps like this. Next question I want to ask myself is what specialist equipment do I need for the job? Okay, so one of the big ones is often a wall breach, such as this map here. It's actually the only one where it's fully required to have a door breach, but think about your plan a little bit. Think about what specialist equipment you need to use as well. Additionally, maps like this, which are rather tight corridors, can actually lend themselves really nicely to a right shield little build, because you can just stack everybody behind the right shield, let him do the job, especially if the ranges are pretty tight, and you can just have the shield eat a couple of the hits and then poke out with your longer range for the slightly longer ones. Otherwise, just use all the short range stuff with your shield to just lead the way and crash those hallways so you don't have to utilize so many grenades. And the last thing that I consider when it comes to the map is how many spots are there to actually deploy with, and what type of spots are they? So as you can see here, we can deploy 6 troops. However, there's 8 spots over here and an extra 4 over here that are mobility slots. So for Rangers, it's really hard to get that mobility down. You either need to shred their helmet or get them wearing next to no body armor, which for the Rangers, especially with the Iron Man rules that we normally rock, okay, it normally leaves them pretty vulnerable. However, the militia, they can actually get down to that mobility level rather easy. And the other benefit is when there's more slots, because militia only take up a half slot, you can actually fill them out a lot more. So you can actually put in, you can fill out the slots. That's the last thing I'm really looking at. The other 2 takes precedence, and that's the dead last one. Okay, also can't forget about the night missions as well. I kind of blanked when I was explaining the last 2, but night is also a precedent. Okay, next up is who we are bringing. So then you have to do a little bit of planning and be like, all right, what do I actually need to do this job? Where are my guys going to go? I'm not just going to throw 10 guys in here and have them all go every which way. I need to know what's going on. So for missions like this, for instance, we can see there is one massive choke point being the bridge. Extremely long range, okay, which means it's either going to be a support or a marksman, or potentially even a grenadier because of the use of the GLA as well, and maybe a combination of both just because of how important this is. However, it also has a lot of tight buildings, so we're going to need some kind of a hit squad to hit them with at least 4 people if we can afford it, depending on the map. So for a level like this, I'd put either a support or a marksman, as well as a grenadier to help them blow out some of the more defensive positions. When I'm picking between a marksman and a support, then it's pretty much, do I want the firepower or do I want the precision fire? And that really depends on the level and if there is any civilians around, or if it's a hostage or something like that, or a HVT. I don't want my machine gun to accidentally kill the wrong thing, and that's where the marksmans come in a little bit better usage. But also sometimes the range itself is just long enough that you know that the marksman's the only real option. Yeah, so some buildings can actually be pretty long range, so when you're picking your hit squad, it's not always about picking close range weaponry and then just heading in with your best bet going shotguns and all, because if I punch down this door here with a shotgun and there's guys behind the bar or something like that, I'm going to get absolutely minced. So I still need to pick the appropriate weaponry. I pretty much, for the ranges, I wouldn't go any bigger than an M4, because they're just kind of the brilliant little middle ground. If it is a super spaced out one like this, maybe you can go with the Ergi or the Mark 17. They're a little bit longer range. And then for the tighter ones, the ones that looks a lot like this, but it's the whole level, that's where you're looking at shotguns, your Mark 18s, so on and so forth. So once you got your jobs assigned, you get your primary weapons done. For the support, you're picking between the shotguns or the LMGs. As far as the LMGs go, they just get heavier. And I think the one that gives you the most flexibility is the M249. You can still hit buildings with it. It's not too bad. If you hit any of these other ones, you're really doing yourself a disservice, because the bigger caliber you go and the longer range they are, they really want to be planted, in which case, and have longer range, in which case you probably just want to use a marksman instead of one of these machine guns, which is why you don't see me selected a whole lot. I'm normally bouncing between these two. When it comes to the marksman, you want to get away from this squad DMR as fast as you can. It's pretty trash in my experience. It doesn't one-shot kill dudes very often, so a lot of the time it's 1 or 2 shots, which isn't too different to an M4, except M4 has the flexibility of going in as well. The Mark 17 is a solid choice to do a mix of both. And if you are going super long range, you can obviously pick the more specialized sniper rifles, but you got to make sure that these guys are definitely on that job for the remainder of the mission, because they're pretty much useless in a tight environment. GLAs, there's not much to talk about because you're pretty much always picking the M4 or the Mark 18. The M16 is just the worst option. And you don't want to pick a shotgun on these guys because the M4 and the Mark 18 give you the same capability, but also the GLA, which is super useful. Including inside buildings, because the GLA can punch down walls without, not walls, doors, without you getting close to it, which is sometimes a lot better if you know that, or if you're scared that there's a suicide bomber on the other side. For the SWAT, okay, there's a couple options for your leader. The AKM with the GLA or the M4 with the GLA are both outstanding options because they're your only access to a GLA with the SWAT squad, so it can't be underestimated. And then on the other end of that, you have the sniper rifles, and the only sniper rifles that are available to the SWAT. Again, the leader is such an important unit that if you're simply putting him on Overwatch, you're probably not getting the best use out of him and his better weaponry than the rest of his squad. So I don't know whether I'd use the Dragunov very often. I'd probably rather prefer to use the Rangers if I could, but the Dragunov is a good option if I need to. There's a couple of middle options such as the SMG and the Vulcan rifle. Not the biggest fan of these, to be honest. I think if you're going close range with the leader, you're doing something wrong. He's not really built for that. He's more for the mid-range / slightly longer range if you need it. I'd pretty much be picking between the Dragunov and the AKM every time. The SWAT Assault. These are where you have quite a lot of options, actually. I'd steer away from the AKM because the way that it burst fires is it leaves a small gap where they can return fire, and when they return fire, they stun you a little bit, which leads to you potentially dying if they've got any other kind of weaponry, such as an AK-47 underfolder. That'll beat out the AKM at certain ranges, especially if you don't kill them quickly. So as soon as you can, I'd recommend switching to the M4. The Vulcan rifle, it's not bad in the closer range, but I've found much better results using the shotgun actually. So it's either shotgun range or it's M4 range for me. The LMG can be good, okay, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't have a very big magazine size, so you can't really use it to suppress. But if you're just pinning him on a position with cover, because machine guns are a lot better if there's cover to use, then it's actually not too bad to hold down a choke point, and you don't have to spare that many dudes to do it because one machine gunner can lock it down pretty reliably. And then you get into the riot shields. As I said before, they're really used for just a narrow corridor where you can't get flanked. The shots are just coming from one direction, so the little example that they're using down the bottom there, that is the worst possible way you should use a riot shield, okay? You want to think of it like the movie 999, where you're just against walls all the time, the rest of your squad's stuck behind it. and you just flow through the fucking building. The sappers are just more of the same. And then you've got your militia. Okay, when it comes to the militia, you've got really 3 options. Okay, you've got the mini Uzi, which is really awesome in close range. It's kind of like shotgun range. The AK-47 underfolder, don't even think about it. The M16's your all-round one, so that's really solid. And then the FALs, where if you don't want to put a assault person on a slightly longer angle, you can spare probably just a militia with an FAL just to hold that long angle once you've already kind of dealt with it and you've passed through it, but you still want to hold it. That's a good usage for the FAL. The AK-47, it doesn't have the range of the the M16, so it's not very good in that, and it gets outshunned by the mini Uzi in the close range department. The big thing with the militia, because you don't have a whole lot of options, is actually looking at their stats. Okay, so if they're a good marksman, you want to try to put them on a FAL if you can, because they're just going to be better at it. So this guy, put him on the FAL. Likewise, if you got someone that's really good at assault shooting, you want to put them on the mini Uzi, and that's kind of how you want to spec out your militia. Okay, heading back to the fucking ranges. Next thing to talk about is suppressors or not. So suppressors do help in alerting the enemy and stuff like that, or not alerting the enemy, I should say. You pretty much only want to use these on hostage or HVT missions. If it's just an eliminate all terrorists, there's no need for them, because you would rather them come to you because you're holding the better angles most of the time. So, but when it comes to the hostage rescue and the HVT, so the HVT doesn't escape and the hostages don't get executed, a suppressor can really help with reducing that noise so that they don't get alerted as early. And you can normally clear up the outsides of buildings and then kind of poke your way through and just get a little bit more progress before you start alerting people. However, it's worth noting that if you're deploying with suppressors, but you're immediately going to wall breach the front gate, you're probably doing it wrong as well. Then we got our sights. Okay, this is where, you know, if you're deciding between a Mark 18 and an M4, and you're like, it's kind of in the middle range, then you're probably better off having the flexibility of an M4, but winding it down to a red dot sight. Likewise, you want to match the sight to the weapon. So I'm not going to pick the M4 and then put a sniper rifle scope on it, okay? I'm just going to pick a marksman for that. Likewise, I'm not going to pick a Mark 18 and put anything above a red dot on it, because it's not made for those ranges, so don't use it for that. For the machine guns, it's kind of a mid-range option. I like to put red dots on it because I found they are still pretty reliable at that medium to long range, just because of how many rounds they're putting out. And red dot just helps them out that little bit more inside. But if they're on strictly a just a street watch fucking job, then it's probably one of the middle options is probably better. For snipers, I normally rock the ACOG just again for that flexibility, but if they are strictly on it and if the map is absolutely huge, then you should go for one of these longer range sights. And then when it comes to the GLA, this is where you actually get a little bit of variance with the sight, because it depends on what the GLA's job is, right? If he's hitting the rooms with the assault squad, then you probably want him with a red dot. If he's doing a little bit of everything, a little bit of a flex job, then you want him on the ACOG. If he's just giving the HE support for a marksman that's chilling out there, then definitely you want the ACOG as well. And those rules are pretty much the same with the SWAT squad. Okay, moving on to the sidearms. They don't really fucking matter, but because you're never going to pull it out unless you fully run out of ammo with your primary weapon and there's an enemy in front of you still and you don't want to get out, which that's happened to me like one time. And honestly, at that, depending on the range, normally any pistol will do, but I've had great usage with the 1911. The only people that it really matters with is honestly the support or sniper, if you're running him in a true sniper or true support fashion with the LSW. Because then you have the flexibility where if your dudes start dying, you can drop these guys off their long job, switch them to the pistol and do all their inside work with the pistol. And the 1911 does do that very well. Okay, next up we have helmets. Okay, there's not much to talk about here with ranges. The next gen helmet's the cheapest and it's the best by a long shot, so just get the next gen helmet. There's no reason not to. For For body armor, there is some considerations for mobility. If you're trying to reach a mobility slot, you almost always need to go into soft armor. And you can get pretty beefed up, but it does cost you mobility, which does matter sometimes, especially on those hostage or HVT missions, because you might not be able to chase down the guy that you want to chase down. And if you are on one of those missions where it is just a straightforward kind of mission in the apartments or something like that, and you don't expect any flanking fire whatsoever, you know, you got a riot shield or something, then you might look at some of these ones here that shed away the side armor, because you are just solely focused on going forward and there's no risk to the sides of your ribs. Okay, moving on to the grenades and extra tools. Okay, when it comes to the ranges, you pretty much always want to have a pair of flashbangs on you as the bare minimum. The next default should be frag grenades. Use flashbangs for enemies that offer rooms that you're a bit sketchy about and you're not sure where they are. And then use frag grenades to dig out people that are in a position of cover, so you can just dig them out there real quick. Your other options are smoke grenades, which are really good actually for a support or a marksman. I normally like to have at least a pair of smokes in every mission except for the eliminate all terrorists, just because you never know with people dying and stuff like that, you might have to give up those long routes, and in order to get out the hostage or the HVT, you might have to smoke something up to get them the fuck out of there. Your other options are Stinger. These just don't work very fucking well. Slap, nah, don't even think about it because the other option's way better. Thermal Torch is an interesting option, particularly for those that are trying to sneak into certain Overwatch positions. So normally more of a marksman kind of job might have these to get to somewhere that they need to be. Or sometimes the Assaulter if you're trying to get through the side of a building and it's got a fence next to it, like the little diagram down the bottom. Then you've got your fucking big jobs. Okay, so out of these, the best options are the rocket launcher for you guys on Overwatch, such as the support or the marksman. The way I utilize it is it's kind of like a wall breach, except from distance. So if it's a wall that my dude on Overwatch can see, then I don't have to use a wall charge from one of my guys that's in the stack, which is good because then I can use that for internal walls later. Spy camera is, I think, such a good fucking item. I get so much value out of it. It's going to save you so much on grenades and just poor usage of items because you know what you're walking into each time. As long as you have somebody to provide Overwatch for that member, it's going to be fucking beautiful. Don't use the dynamic hammer. Use the breacher shotgun. It's the faster way of getting in. And you pull out your weapon sooner because it kind of turns it into a kick. So you're a lot quicker on the draw. So if you're going to do something for a locked thing, I'd probably rather the breacher shotgun. But a lot of the time I don't even use this. I just use the manual fucking breach mode anyway and use a combination of the camera and grenades or potentially smokes to cover him while I am breaching that. Because then I can use the big slot on either extra flashbangs, which are always good, or slaps or wall breaches. These are your most important resources, I think. So I always like to bring two guys holding slaps if I can. One is a main guy and one is a backup just in case he dies. Same with the wall breach. The wall breach is mega important for hostage rescue and HVTs because hostages and HVTs can't jump out of windows. So if you jump in a window, find the HVT, you're actually still going to have to fight out the front door or back door unless you have a wall breach to breach out your fucking window that you came in which case you can just get in, get out, mission done, nice and easy. So necessity. Over on the SWAT side of the house, as far as the grenades go, okay, you get pretty much the same options, but instead of a stinger, you get a Molotov cocktail. Okay, not as good. It's such a small range that if you're going to burn something at that range, it's the lethal radius of a grenade anyway, so you may as well just use a frag grenade. It's worth noting that the SWAT only get one of each, so the way I normally like to do it is that my leader and my assaulters will pretty much run a flash and a frag every time, with my militia normally running double flash. The reason for this is that I want more kills on my assaulters and stuff like that to level them up. And these guys are pretty much just packing the extra bangs. And sprinkle in some smokes, of course, when it's applicable for the hostage or HVT missions. And then when it comes to the special slot for the assaulters, dynamic hammers, your only faster way to get through a locked door, so they're not too bad at all. And then your rocket launchers, these are kind of your makeshift wall breachers if you don't want to use one of your sappers. Speaking of the sappers, because there's not many sappers, okay, you really have to make the most of your charges. So what I like to do is run double door charges in the grenade slot and use all my other guys for my grenades, because then that'll let me run 3 wall charges on the one guy. And then I don't have to bring 2 sappers on the mission. I can just rely on the one. And he is not there to take fights. He's not there to do fucking anything. His sole job is breaching. I'm just going to protect him as such because they're kind of, them and the leader are the most important guys on the SWAT team for sure. Alright, and that is how I do my setups every time. So if you're wondering about what I'm editing out, okay, it's a lot of just clicking through everything, copy and pasting and that. It's not very interesting. Okay, but I hope I've done a good job of explaining it and hopefully this will help you out on your missions next time you bid up the game. Anyway, I'll see you on the next video. Peace!